Hello, everybody. It is another episode of Let's Rank Stuff. We are going to be talking about a filmmaker that has been around for a while, but he's still one of those names that you kind of only know him if you're like within the community and you kind of like talk about movies. You know his movies, but on a name basis, he's not as popular as like some of these other filmmakers we talk about. But before we get in that, Austin Pessow, how are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. Just a little behind the scenes. I won't spoil anything, but I just had a battleground match and switched over to this, so my blood pressure is up. I'm glistening and sweating. So if I look a little extra shiny tonight with my brand new setup, I got a new camera, new audio, new everything. So we're looking good, feeling good. But no, I'm good. I'm glad to sit here and just kind of have a cool down while I talk some Mathew Vaughn with you. So that'll be nice. And
ironically, this is a good filmography to have. That like this, regardless of like what's going to rank where or overall feelings on them, it's more of those action movies that it's essentially similar to our Edgar Wright show that we had, where it's that British comedy action hybrid with some other stuff that's just a lot of fun. And whether it's the greatest movies of all time, whether it's not, whether they're bad, whether they're good, there's something to like latch on to from at least all of them, at least a little bit. So it's definitely, and it's ironically not really as the similar as you would assume. Like going into it, you're like because he has a set style, but like as I'm like looking at my list and I'm thinking of the movies, it's like none of them really feel the same. Even ones within the same franchise of the Kingsman franchise, where it's like none of them feel the same. Like there's still enough differences throughout this surprising. So kudos to that. And I'm excited that. What was your first Mathew Vaughn experience?
I was looking back on it, and I'm pretty sure it was Kick-Ass, which I have a story about. If you want to hear it either now or later, I do have a story about seeing Kick-Ass. So my story about Kick-Ass is I went into it. I was looking at the trailers, and if you look back at the trailers, they really marketed it as a comedy. Like a straight kind of goofy, almost like a super bad with superheroes, sort of a thing. Essentially, when you go back and look at the trailers. So when I saw it initially, and it took some of the dark turns that it takes, and it kind of gets a little hyper violent and hyper realistic, near the end, and there's some dark stuff, especially in that final act. I initially didn't like the movie. I came out with a negative experience. I didn't like it. I wanted more comedy expectations, and really that's marketing expectations was the whole thing, different thing than like I didn't have Mathew Vaughn expectations or like Kick-Ass. I never read the graphic novel. I think I felt like I was sold a bill of goods. However, I had a friend at the time who wanted to go see the movie. This is about a week later, and he didn't like going to movies by himself. So I said, okay, I'll go see it. And I was like, I didn't really love the movie, but I'll go back and watch it again. But now knowing that stuff was coming and knowing where it goes and watching the movie develop, from that, I really liked the movie the second time on the viewing. So I'm glad I had that second viewing. And literally within a week, my opinion on the movie had changed. And I was like recommending it to everybody. Yeah. So it was an interesting experience. Sometimes that just happens. You have goofy movie things like that. You go watch it after.
That's why whenever I talk to people about films, I say don't worry about expectations. That's your fault. Like if you go in, like for example, Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, if you're expecting millions and millions of different like
cameos and shit,
and that's on you. That's not on the movie's fault. If judge a movie based on what it says and presents itself within the movie. Don't get me wrong. I do hate mismarketing. Like for example, like Mother is a great example of that being a very hard. That and Crimson Peak being very like hardcore, horror films, and then really just being like kind of spiritual dramas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so Kick-Ass is actually my first one as well. I don't remember if it was in 2010 or around that area, but I know it was clearly my first one, and then X-Men, and then Kingsman. So essentially,
from Kingsman on, seeing him theatrically. Yeah, I saw him all theatrically after that. Once I became a fan of Kick-Ass, I was looking forward to it. When I knew he was jumping into X-Men, I was very excited because I like Kick-Ass. And then, going in and not knowing what Kingsman was, and it was kind of still based on a comic too, but he was taking on another comic property. I was like, hell yeah, bring it on. And I feel like he makes something unique. We'll talk about that movie, obviously, in a little while. But he's not a household name like a Nolan, like a Spielberg or anything like that. But I feel like he's got a really unique filmography thus far, even though it's only 7 movies. And like I said, not everyone is exactly the same, but yet he still has somewhat of a style, and some of his, action sequences, some of the hyper realism stuff he does here and there. But it's a really unique filmography, and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started because I'm definitely curious to see if you're where you are with me. This is gonna be the first episode where I don't want to call it punting, but just for the sake of it, for the first time, that's what we're gonna do. We'll just, like you said, table it, and we'll talk about it just so we talk about it. The conversation as one. But my number 7 is first time watch. And I will say this: technically, it is amazing. I just don't care. Stardust. It didn't do
Okay.
nothing for me on a personal level.
We could table it, but not very far.
Okay.
Not
So
very
go
far.
ahead and sit with your 7. We'll see.
Okay. My number 7 was also a first time watch. It's The King's Man.
And that's
Yeah.
my
Okay.
number 6. So we can pretty much.
Okay, so we can kind of start talking about these movies because they're so close. So, which one do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about you mentioned Stardust first. Let's talk Stardust first.
So I'm assuming that's your 6.
It's my number 6.
Okay.
So yeah.
So yeah, we'll double up on these. So Stardust, like I said, technically this movie is beautiful. It looked good. The sound design's fantastic. The acting is actually really good. I really like the twist that it did with Robert De Niro of kind of being an actor and all that stuff. I just didn't care about the Stardust plotline of it. I didn't care about the love stuff of it. And it just did zero for me. It's not like I have anything against fantasy. It's not like I have anything against romance stories or none of that. It just, I don't know what it was. It just didn't connect with me. And like I said, it's the perfect definition. A lot of people say this phrase within the community. I respect it and I appreciate it more than I enjoy it. And I liked it. It just didn't do anything for me personally, but I cannot deny its merits. And yeah, so it's one of those where it's like unless I have to study for trivia, I'm okay. I don't need to rewatch it. I'm fine. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm just not a fantasy guy. I never have been. You know, these fantasy movies, almost these sort of fairy tale thing. You know, I'm not a Willow guy. I'm not a Princess Bride guy. I'm not, even like a Highlander guy, really. You know, these like fantasy movies, and Stardust definitely like falls into that. It's sort of this almost like a storybook, fantasy thing. And again, but the reason I have it higher than my number 7 is I enjoy watching some of the characters more than the characters in my number 7 because I just don't latch on to anybody in that movie. I really like Robert De Niro in this movie. I think it's one of his cooler sort of later performances. I think he's actually having fun with it. You can tell he's having a good time. He's enjoying the twist of playing this tough pirate, kind of badass guy, but then you find out he's like this. He's gay and he's like, and he's just like very flamboyant, very sensitive, and like he's just playing a character, which I love. Again, being from like wrestling background and stuff, like playing characters, like that's kind of a cool dynamic that he's just putting on this front, for his crew, and putting on this tough guy thing. I really like that stuff, and so like every scene he's in, I'm invested in, and I think even Michelle Pfeiffer's really good. It's one of her later roles. I think she's having a good time as well, and really cool. Again, some of the characters, like it's cool to see Charlie Cox like outside of Daredevil, but I think he's kind of bland in the movie. Yeah. Like I don't think he's like great.
It's him because he doesn't really stand out.
Yeah, he doesn't stand out. Henry Cavill even doesn't stand out. I mean, he's pre-Superman, but he's just kind of there. There's a good cast when you look at it. It's like Claire Danes and Ian McKellen's doing the narration. Like it's got all the pieces in place to make a really cool movie. And again, I know for a fact this movie works for some people because my ex used to watch this movie all the time. Like she loves this movie, and I totally get it. I'm just not a fantasy guy myself. Yeah. But again, this one is just a little bit higher than what I mentioned as my number 7, just because I actually like watching some of the characters. I do get invested in a couple of the different little storylines. So so it's just slightly higher for that. But yeah, I don't care much either for fantasy stuff. It's just not my bag.
Yeah.
So,
and then going over to The King's Man, this was another first time watch for me. This is a movie. So I don't want to say it's unnecessary because I actually didn't mind the prequel aspect to it, and because it didn't feel like a prequel really until we're really being honest, the last 10 minutes where it's actually getting into the Kingsman stuff. The rest was just more of a World War I drama movie, and the opening 20 minutes roughly, I was like, okay, this might actually be my favorite, and then the next 20-30 minutes just does nothing, and then at that point it kind of plateaus to it. It's not negative at that point, but it's just teeters. And I did like the ending climax with Ray Fiennes and the one character went over the ledge and all that stuff, and his son dying, spoiler alert, his son dying, I was actually not expecting that. So that
it really does come out of nowhere after he's done this heroic thing in the no man's land, and he does all that only to have a guy who thinks he's a spy just shoot him out of nowhere. It's just like, holy shit.
I give Mathew Vaughn credit for doing something like that. So it's I'm still 3 stars on this movie. It wasn't a terrible experience because the highs, I don't want to say they were high, but the highs, they were fine, and the lows weren't that really low. It's more just boring than bad. So I feel like as a whole, if I had to go back and watch this, I'm more that's why it's one spot above Stardust. I'm more likely to go rewatch this than I would Stardust. And the acting's fine, and the action and the war scenes, it felt like a nice little war movie. So it did nothing bad about it. It's just I didn't care ultimately by the end. Then the Rasputin character, he was cool. The stuff with him, there were elements where it's I wish I wanted more, but for what we got, it did a fine job. And then the twist at the end, you know, it was what it was. But
Yeah.
as a whole, it was fine.
Yeah, and again, I'm not totally, I'm right in between like positive and negative. Like I'm like right on the border. It's like 2.5 kind of thing. Just because again, I found the movie, especially in the middle, just kind of boring. You know, like I was just bored, just kind of waiting for things to happen. I didn't care for all the scenes where they were plotting stuff, and I just didn't get invested in Ray Fiennes' character. Like again, he's fine. He's doing a good performance. You know, like he's the opening that you talked about with him and Jaimon Hatsu in that little village, like getting and his wife dying, like all that stuff is like really well done and really good. And I was with it. And then it just kind of like, I just started checking out. I just wasn't there. The No Man's Land stuff picks up a little bit, you know, the knife fight sequence they have in the middle with the guys in the gas mask, like all that stuff is pretty good. And then, like I said, the Rasputin stuff is interesting. I don't know if I loved it, but it's something. You know, the stuff
it's
where
memorable.
It's memorable. I mean, when he's hitting on Ray Fiennes and he's like eating the cake, it's like it's memorable. But I don't know if I loved it. But yeah, I just found myself kind of tuning out a lot. I just wasn't super invested in any of the characters or any of the storylines. So again, it's not horrible. It's just to me kind of forgettable, and it really did make me want to just more see like a Statesman movie, like a continuation of that trilogy rather than a prequel. Because I just was just like, was that really worth it, or could we have done a continuation of Kingsman and Statesman kind of stuff? Exactly. You know, as we'll talk about. Like, I just wanted more. I wish he would have just kept going and made it a trilogy and kind of wrapped up that stuff rather than going backwards. Like, I just didn't need the backwards stuff. Again, if you want to make a prequel, that's cool, but it's hit or miss when you do that. So for me, it was just kind of a miss.
It's one of those where I don't feel like any of the the Kingsman stuff, like with the Merlin and the Lancelot and all those characters, like it felt natural within the story, but it also felt like out of left field because the most of the movie didn't feel like a Kingsman movie. It felt like a World War I movie. So I felt like you either gotta that's where you run the risk, like you said, like when you're doing a prequel, you run the risk of just like you're kind of pandering, or you're kind of like, you know, whatever, fan service. So you got to really find that line, and I felt like they were on the other side of the line of like not really enough of the prequel stuff, and kind of
again, we'll talk about a prequel that I like that he did, you know, at some point, you know, that I do like very much, that I think works much better. But yeah, this one just doesn't work for me as much. But I just like some of the characters in Stardust more, so it's just a little bit for me.
But so yeah, that's my number 6. My number 5 is one I actually have on the background right now, just because I wanted to just have something on the background while I was judging your debate. Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Okay. I'm not far off. I'm just one spot off, so we're close.
Let's see where your 5 is and see if
so my number 5 is Layer Cake. Is it there?
We will talk about that later.
Okay. So all right. So what do we talk about?
We can talk about we'll talk about Kingsman now, because then we'll see whatever your 4 is. But Golden Circle. Golden Circle is a movie that I'm gonna start off. It's too long. That's like, if I have to go one real criticism where it's not just, you know, a certain subjective.
About 20 minutes too long. That's kind of what
it should be at that 2 hour mark, and it's almost 2.5. You know what I mean? It's too long, and it's one of those things where the Harry stuff, I'm okay with it, but I do feel like it felt forced in terms of like, oh, the Statesman just popped up right as it happened. It's like, I don't know. It's nothing about what happened in Secret Service felt like that was really likely. So it's one of those where it's like, it doesn't like, you know, knock the movie too much, but it's like, I feel like they could have had a better explanation. I don't mind the ice mask that really like helped him. Like, I'm cool with that. But it's just more of the plot device of like, oh,
where it goes and like kind of where it goes, and it's just weird, and his performance is strange,
and it's long. Like don't get me wrong, I give it credit where it's like they're patient with it. They didn't just quickly turn him back into Harry, but also it was also a knock too, because it's like, all right, let's get it going. But I really like Pascal's character. I really like honestly the Charlie character. He's like a Bond henchman kind of, where he's just, you know, a bully, but like it's nice continuance of the first one, because you know what you got in that character of just being a hater on Eggy. So you know, it works as a sequel, so it's not so bad. Julianne Moore's character, she knows what she's in, so you either have to be all in and accepting of the character, or you're not. She's like, hey, I'm going all in. Like I'm introducing myself fucking out in a different country, you know, as a drug dealer, and I'm making burgers with people's bodies. You know what I mean? Like if you're and I have robotic dogs. Like if you're not accepting that, then you're just not going to accept it. Like,
I keep Elton John in a theater to just play songs for me.
And it was funny, like in the explanation, she was like, when Valentine was like kidnapping celebrities, I was like, how do I not jump on that train? Like, let me get Elton. She literally just did it for selfish reasons because she wanted to, and then she happened to do other stuff later as a villain, but she specifically wanted Elton John for her own personal. So yeah, I mean, I love Taron Egerton as Eggsy. I actually like the balls of the opening of, you know, killing off all the Kingsmen, and I love how they did it 10, 15, 20 minutes into the movie, unlike Alien 3, where it's at the beginning. So at least it felt more shocking instead of just a slap in the face.
Well,
you know what I mean?
just a credit sequence,
Exactly.
you know, essentially with Alien 3.
Yeah. So it really felt like it that was the balls that I really liked. Or like at the beginning of Last Jedi, where you just start off him chucking the thing. At least let that go later. You know what I mean? But yeah. So this one, it actually worked for me for exerting expectations, averting expectations. But anyway, so it's one of those too long. The one creepy thing with the finger thing, it didn't offend me, but don't get me wrong, it didn't, like, there could have been a better way to do that. Like, that's not even about like the times, you know, this came out in 2017, so even then it was like oof. But like, it's not like it offends me personally, but like if I'm thinking of someone, I'm like, yeah, I say that's unnecessary for, you know, anything. But like, if those are the only two things I have negative on the movie, the rest is fun. You know, I love the Statesman, like you said. Channing Tatum's fun, Pascal's fun, Bridges is fun. Like everything about all that stuff, it makes me want more. So I'm intrigued, and you know, it's something to throw on the background, because I'm not going to really sit down and watch a 2.5-hour movie like an action movie as often. But if I'm having it in the background, I'm going to look up, see some blue lines on people's faces, and be like, oh, that's cool.
See Pedro Pascal whipping around an electric whip, and be like, all right, this is fun.
in a snow elevator, and they're having fun.
No, I mean, I feel like this movie got like weird hate when it came out. Like, it got bad reviews, and like people were like not into it. But like, especially on this most recent rewatch, because I saw it in the theater, but I didn't remember like a ton other than a few specific things. And like, obviously, I think the first one is better, but I think this one is still a lot of fun. Like, again, if you'd shaved off 20 minutes, it'd be a really tight, like really fun movie. But I like what everybody's doing in the movie. I like Julianne Moore. Yeah, again, she knows exactly what she's doing, and she's doing exactly what her character has to do. And she, you're with it, but like, I'm with it. Like, I like it. I like how silly she is and her delivery. I think Eggsy's great. Yeah, the Harry stuff is wonky. I almost wish they'd either just left him dead or like just did it in a different way. Like, Amnesia is always a weird like plot thread, you know, to do. It can work sometimes, but a lot of times it doesn't. But yeah, it just made me want to see more Statesman stuff, because I think Jeff Bridges is great. Like, Channing Tatum's not in the movie a lot, but like, he's really fun in the scenes he's in. You know, especially the opening when he like fights them and then kind of interrogates them and stuff. Like, he's great. And yeah, I had forgotten honestly that Pedro Pascal was in it, or it was one of those things where I go back and see, and now I know who Pedro Pascal is because of like the Mandalorian, and I'm like, oh shit, that was the fucking Mandalorian. Like, 'cause I didn't know that at the time, and I was like, oh, there he is. Like, that's awesome. And he's really
got on the Mandalorian for all we know. You know what I mean?
And he's got a ton of charisma in this movie. Like, he's having a blast, like with his character. And I love all of his lasso whip stuff. Like, all that stuff is really great. And like, it's a unique dynamic. Again, you know, the Kingsman using the umbrellas, like he's using like the whips and the lassos and shit. Like, all that stuff's a lot of fun. 6 shooters. Like, it's just, there's really great sequences throughout it. Again, yeah. Can you nitpick things here and there and tighten it up here and there? Sure. But I'm still positive on the movie. I still like it a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's a 3-star, but like, if I did halves, it would be a solid confirmed 3.5. Like,
I go like a 3.5. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's
around. And if it was 2 hours long, it would be a comfortable 4. Like, no doubt about it.
Totally.
So I'm gonna get my 4 out of the way, and then I'll let you talk about your 4, because I know you're going to save it for later. But my 4 is First Class.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll save that for later.
So what is your 4?
Well, my 4 was Golden Circle.
Okay.
And then I just hadn't talked about my 5 yet, but we'll get to that. So
yeah,
my 4 was Golden Circle. So I was getting
what's your 3 then? I'll give you a chance.
My number 3 is the original Kingsman.
That is exactly my number 3 too.
All right. So now we can cross over and talk about it. Yeah. And again, here's my thing. My top 3, all 5 stars. I think all these movies are fucking great. And like, and literally just ranking them as like the ones I've gone back to more, the ones I just click with and put on a whole lot, you know, that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen Kingsman. I've probably seen it 4 or 5 times, but my first 2 I've seen dozens of times. You know what I mean? Like I'm just there. So, but yeah, Kingsman is like super fun. And I remember when I went to see it, I didn't really know the setup. I knew it was kind of a spy-ish, sort of movie, maybe like a young sort of James Bond sort of thing. Like I didn't really know much about the graphic novel. I didn't know any of the background, but like I think they take the spy thing and the gadget stuff and really put a unique twist on it. Like I really like the concept of the Kingsman, like of this, sort of underground like spy agency, but like Michael Caine's running it, which is fun. And then it's refreshing to see Mark Strong as a hero instead of a villain, like as we'll see and don't get me wrong, he's a great villain, as I'll talk about later.
And he's got a good voice for that, but he also is a good Merlin. Like he's got that,
because you keep waiting for him to turn on him, but he like never does. And then you go back and watch the movie and he doesn't. So like you can appreciate it even more like on rewatches because you're like, no, he's just a good guy.
I think of him in this movie as Merlin, as Andy Serkis as Alfred in the Batman, where he's just that stern father figure like instead of that grandfather figure like of Michael Caine in the Dark Knight trilogy. So I agree with what you're saying, where it's like that he brings that gravitas, but it's also because he's the man in the chair in the second half of the movie, you know what I mean? He becomes, or the climax or whatever, and it's like that point where he's a badass. But everything, by the way, we didn't shout out everything in Golden Circle with his
his out is great when he's like singing the John Denver song and like and he goes out like a badass, but he's great, he got his dream of being in the field, you know what I mean, and unfortunately obviously he doesn't survive, but he's great and he's fun and it's a nice little like kind of full circle thing. But yeah, he's great even just as the man in the chair in this movie. He's got the presence for it, he's got the delivery for it, and yeah, Eggsy is just so much fun watching him do the training, like become, a Kingsman, and seeing him go from like this.
He's got that chip on his shoulder too.
Yeah.
It's that spunk little punk kid who couldn't do all the military stuff, then gets recruited because of his dad, and then you find it's the best example of like whenever people argue about why a character is, why are they so good at something all of a sudden without the training? I'm like, sometimes it's just within, and this is a perfect example where it's like sometimes it's just in your blood, you know what I mean, and you just have to have it pushed out. And Eggsy does a great job of that. I loved all the stuff with the bullies, the manners maketh man. Are we gonna talk? Are we gonna fight? Like all those stuff that stands out, and that's why this movie is so high for me. Is just because like it's actually gone down. This used to be like a solid like 5-star top 100 movie, but it's gone down to a 4-star just because it is just a little bit too much, you know what I mean? So I have to be in the mood for it. I can't just throw it on, and I feel like that's important for like my favorite movies. They just need to be, I shouldn't have to be in the mood for these types of movies. But it's not necessarily a knock on it. It's just gone down as my personal taste. But like all the vibes, all the parachute scene is just so thrilling, and it's like holy cow, like you're invigorated, because especially at the time you don't know all the deaths are fake. So at the time you're just like, oh my god, dude, someone's gonna get splatted.
Somebody's dying. Well, and even that, like the dog stuff, like the moral conundrum of like the dog, like they kill the dog. It's just like, oh
James
my god,
Bond, like Jack Bauer.
What a weird, like a strange test, but like what a cool, unique thing. The stuff where the room's filling up with water, like all this stuff is fun. And yeah, we haven't even talked about like the Freebird, church sequence, which is just a blast. Like how they're able to hyper edit it to make it look like one take. Obviously, it's not, but like the way it just swings all around, and you're just following him like surviving, but also like taking everybody out. Like, and we didn't talk about Sam Jackson. Like he's definitely doing a unique character. Like he's doing this like lispy thing, but like. I don't even care about that.
It's Bond villains, like he didn't want to have any facial contortions, so he's like, I'm gonna have a lisp. You know what I mean? Instead of having a cutout eye or whatever, I'm gonna have a lisp, and I'm
gonna have a lisp, and I'm gonna order McDonald's all the time. It's just he's doing something, but you can tell he's having fun, not just being like Pulp Fiction badass like Sam Jackson, just kind of being more laid back.
It definitely showcased his acting abilities, which I feel like a lot of people have taken him for granted as an actor. Like they forget how good he was in Pulp Fiction because he's just Samuel Jackson now. But like his Samuel Jackson is still good. Like sometimes just like with Robert Downey Jr., like he's just playing Iron Man or whatever. It's like, dude, when you're that good, like it feels the same.
It was like it was like the Long Kiss Goodnight performance, which is not like Pulp Fiction. It's a more fun, like he's having fun, like he's popping up one-liners, he's being a little sillier, like, but he's still being a badass. He's just like, it's a different dynamic, and he's got that range, and like he shows that in those movies like Long Kiss Goodnight and like this movie. Sophia Boutella is awesome in this movie as like the henchman.
Everything with her legs, dude. She slices people up.
Oh my god, that stuff is so much fun.
And the favorite, because it's a combination of just having style, but also showcasing getting away from the ratings. But like when all the heads are blowing up and it's just the colors and all that stuff, dude, that's so cool, dude. Like that's how you get. That's like everyone makes fun of Morbius for doing the blue blood instead of the red blood, so they can make it PG-13. But it's like this movie, it's like it's R, but instead of being X with all this,
gonna have a rainbow blow up.
Instead of it being the third act of Suspiria remake, it's gonna be a whole bunch of colors,
it's like confetti and colors, and all that
so much fun, dude. And it's very satisfying by the end. And then when he throws the leg through Valentine and he kills, and then everything with his mom about to kill the baby.
Oh my god, dude, that's
once again, you're like, everything that this movie's done, you don't know. Maybe it might.
Maybe.
But yeah, so this movie's awesome, and it's gone down. Like I said, when I'm watching, I'm having a blast, but I just don't go back to watch as much anymore, just because it's so heavy,
I'm kind of the same, which is why it's my number 3 instead of my 2 or 1. Like that's the only reason. It's like I could put on my other 2 like way more often and just like whenever, and just have a blast with them. But, this one I kind of have to be in the mood for it too and sit down and watch it like full on.
There you go. All right, so I'm going to go to my number 2 now because it's one that you mentioned. This is a first-time watch. Layer Cake, dude. I loved this movie. I was shocked. Like, let's just put it this way. My only critique, and it's literally my only critique, is it just says fuck like so much that it just feels like a script.
But that's a British gangster thing.
I get it. I get it. But it's like when I'm used to Daniel Craig as Bond and he doesn't say it ever, but he's saying it almost every other word in this movie. It just it's one of those where it's like, okay, it just felt like a script. But everything else, dude, I loved it. I loved the storyline. I loved the gangster beats. I loved so going into this, everyone's always like, oh, this is the movie they got Craig Bond. I'm like, oh, sure, because I'm thinking like Road to Perdition type of vibes, or it's like that type of action, or maybe even Snatch, where it's like, I know there's elements to it. No, this is slick. This is clean. This is suave. The scene when he actually hooks up with that girl just to get the attention before he gets kidnapped by Michael Gambon's character, like it does a great job of just like, oh shit, like this is Bond, dude. So everything about this movie is awesome. It's funny, it's fun, it's like it looks good. Like I'm gonna this says just now the new poster on Letterboxd is cool. I'll actually show you. It's like this the car, you know what I mean, or the taxi, whatever, with the iron on it. So that looks cool. But like for the longest time, it's just the one where he's just sitting there with his gun, and it just looks so boring and bland. You're like, this movie sucks, but it's like beautiful to look at too. Like the cinematography, it's well shot. It's got so how I always diss Spielberg's 2000s of just that oversaturation with the whatever. This is that 2000s that looks good. Like when I watched not Lucky Number 11, but the other one. What's the other one that's kind of like that?
Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces. I watched Smoking Aces for the first time, and it had that look where it's like that digital look, but with not that filter. So it just looks clean. And this was it had that good look. So yeah, I love this movie, dude. Borderline 5-star off the rip. Like I enjoyed this movie, and I haven't had a refreshing first time watch for a first time that shocked me. Like I was going in, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna think it's fine. Like even after I went on my Letterboxd, and only about 12 people have like rated it, and only one review, and everything's 3.5 stars or 3 stars. I'm like, honestly, I don't believe any of you. It's similar to what we talked about a couple weeks ago about a movie, and I was like, I don't believe that any of you had seen this. You just rated it because you're supposed to say something about it, and that's like, nah, I don't believe it. But yeah, dude, I had a blast. Daniel Craig is awesome, and this movie was so cool. It felt like a Guy Ritchie movie meets Edgar Wright movie. Like Mathew Vaughn came out, kicking with this, and I had a blast. For you. Why? How come?
No, it's lower for me just because, I don't see myself going back to this movie a lot. I kind of got everything I needed to get out of it. And these two, I've seen it twice now because I saw it years ago, just when I think it was around the time he was going to be Bond. So like I rented it from somewhere, you know what I mean? Or watched it. And because people had talked about, Layer Cake is like a good movie. And I haven't seen it in a long time. But yeah, going back to it, like I like the cast a lot. Like I'm a Star Trek Next Generation guy. So seeing Cole Meany like have a kind of a meaty role as that Gene guy, like as sort of the handler of like Craig and all those guys, like it's fun. Seeing the dude, looking up his name, Burn Gorman from Pacific Rim, like the guy's like the kaiju, must be control, like
Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. He's a lot of fun. Like I had forgotten Tom Hardy was in this movie.
I didn't even know. And then Tom Hardy's one of my favorite actors. So even if I had never seen it, I was like, oh, that he's in there. When he popped up, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's Tom Hardy, and he's like sort of Craig's sort of right hand man, sort of a guy. But yeah, like you can see all the stuff that that would make him Bond. Like you were talking about the scene where he's kind of seducing like his girl, like he's very suave, like just like in his movements and everything. I love the opening like 20 minutes where they're just breaking down everything that they do, you know, like sort of the montagey sort of thing where he's narrating, you know, like this is what we do, you know, I'm gonna get out of this soon, you know, like, but you know, breaking down like how the business works, like all that stuff is fascinating. I love movies about like drug smuggling or like drug cartels or you know,
and it's different
like
too with ecstasy. Like you don't see that is often.
Yeah,
so
it's just
fresh.
like, oh, I got like, you know, a million pills, you know, like it's just, yeah, you don't see pills a lot. Yeah, it's mostly cocaine or heroin or whatever, but it's like, no, I got all these bags of pills, you know.
So it gave you that party vibe too. So whenever you're going to the scenes or you have the one gangster. By the way, did you oh my God, I already forgot who it was. All right, keep talking. I'm gonna look it up. It's a main actress, and I was like, wow, that was
Sally Hawkins. Yeah, Sally Hawkins.
I was like, holy shit, I did not realize she was wilding out in this movie.
Sally Hawkins from The Shape of Water. Yeah, it's like
she doesn't say anything, and in this one, she doesn't shut the fuck up. Like,
no.
I feel like she watched Sarah Silverman's character at the beginning of the Way of the Gun. It was like, I'm gonna be that character for this entire movie. Like,
Benicio del Toro smacks the shit out of her. Yeah,
I feel like that's what inspired this character. Dude, this movie was awesome. It was so refreshing. I'm telling you, I haven't finished a movie on a first time watch in a long time, other than like a new release, where I was like, wow, why is nobody talking about this movie? And like this was awesome.
It's just a little lower for me because the whole like British gangster movie is just not really like totally my thing. Like I'm not really as much into like Snatch and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. It's just like not, or The Gentleman, you know, it's just not as much like my thing. Yeah. It's just, they're just not, I'm not as high on those types of movies. There's a great SNL parody, by the way. That's kind of a parody of this sort of movie. And like The Gentleman, it's a thing with Bill Hader where it's called Don't You Go Running Around and Rero. And it's just to make you fun of how fast they talk sometimes that you can't understand like what they're saying. You should go look it up. It's basically a parody of like all those Guy Ritchie movies, but they're talking so much like British verbiage, you know, that like you can't understand what the hell they're talking about. So like it gets to the point where the trailer, like they're like, "What'd you say?" Like the subtitles are like, "What?" You know, like it's a lot of fun. So
like that one scene in in Uncharted where the one guy's like, "You're gonna get a Scottish welcome," and then Tom Holland's like what?
Yeah, he's like, I literally don't know what you're talking. Yeah, it's a fun. That's just a side recommendation on YouTube after the show. But yeah, like again, I like the movie. I'm positive on the movie. I had a good rewatch. It was good. It's just not, again, much like Stardust, it's not really a genre that I like to gravitate to, and that I'm going to go back to. So I don't have really a lot of things bad to say about the movie. It's more about I'm not going to go back and watch this movie anytime soon. You know,
I respect that then. Yeah,
that's all. So I've seen it. You know, I can tell you I've seen it. I've seen it twice, and I'm not making up fake reviews. It's a good movie. Well, it's a solid good movie. You know, not one I'm going to give 5 stars and go back to over and over again, but it's a good movie. So I do like it.
There you go. What is your highest that you haven't talked about yet, or your lowest?
I guess it's X-Men because you mentioned it, but it's my number 2. So X-Men First Class.
That's my number 4. So you go ahead.
Okay, so X-Men First Class. When I saw this movie in the theater, and we have to remember the context of, we were coming off of both X-Men Last Stand and the Origins Wolverine movie. Not even the Wolverine, like the Origins Wolverine movie. So X-Men was in a rough spot, you know, when this movie came out. So a lot of people did not have a lot of high expectations for this, or at least, you know, it's still an X-Men movie, so people were like looking forward to it. But I thought the change, you know, going to a prequel aspect, recasting, you know, pretty much the entire main cast was interesting. And then, man, when I sat there and watched this movie, like everything just clicked for me from this one, man. I just thought it was so much fun. I love the setting of the 60s. I think that's just so unique. I think they play right into it. I buy into every second that they're in the 60s. You know what I mean? From like the little go-go clubs to like the wardrobe to like even the university stuff, like you know, where everybody's like drinking in the pubs. Like everything is just so period authentic. I think Mathew Vaughn, knocks it out of the park with that. The casting in this movie is so spot on. James McAvoy is amazing. Michael Fassbender is fucking incredible in this movie. And his scenes, dude, that scene where he's in the Venezuela or Argentina, I forget where it is, but he's in South America doing the bar scene, you know, where he's hunting the Nazis, like, and he does the slow reveal of like the tattoo and like the music. The Henry Jackman music is great. It's called Frankenstein's Monster. It's one of my favorite pieces from this movie.
It's a great introduction.
dun 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 dun,
It
and,
slowly just becomes into evil. You know what I mean?
you hear it in the background, it just slowly builds and builds and builds to the reveal, and how he just handles everybody and like showcases his powers, but he's not super overpowered. It's just like these simple things he does to like take the piss out of everybody. It's just great how he's kind of toying with everybody. Even the stuff in the banker, he's like toying with that guy, like is a lot of fun when he just kind of looks at him and he kind of slowly sees like the thing in his teeth, and he just sort of coaxes it out with his finger. Like all that stuff is amazing. Kevin Bacon's having so much fun. I was so happy to see Kevin Bacon in a great role. Like his Sebastian character is like
so cool. With January Jones? Is that
January Jones is like Emma Frost, and she's kind of bland. Like she's like the low point of the movie, but I can forgive that because she's really just kind of a henchman. Like it's not a big deal.
She's serviceable for what she's asking.
Yeah, she's fine. But Kevin Bacon is like so charismatic.
I mean, he starts off at the beginning too of just his evilness to becoming of just.
I didn't even mention that opening scene. Holy shit, that opening scene! Like when he pulls him out into the office and he like kills his mom and he's coaxing him into it, and he's giddy while he's like having his fit. He's like, yeah, wunderbar. Like he's having so much fun because he knows that he can't be hurt. By Magneto. So like no matter what the kid does, he doesn't age. He can't be hurt. Whatever. And like all that stuff is great. I just think everything clicks. Like even Jennifer Lawrence is good. All the side characters, Banshee and Beast, Nicholas Hoult. It's just so perfectly cast, perfectly paced. I think it's got great action sequences. The climax that it builds to with like the working into the Cuban Missile Crisis is really unique and really fun.
Everything
kind of a real life thing.
He does a good job of just building up their relationship, and it gives the heart to Charles Xavier, and just like you.
I just think this movie is so well paced. All the moments are cool. The emotional stuff where he's digging into Magneto's like psyche to make him like turn while he's turning the thing, and he's crying and like he's bawling his eyes out. Like that stuff almost makes me cry. Like it's so good. Like the way it's just filmed and everything. Everything in this movie works. It's literally just like my margin between my number 1 and 2 is like razor thin. You know what I mean? It's like almost nothing at all. Like I could switch them on any given day. I think this movie is not only my favorite X-Men movie. It's definitely, again, it could be my number 1 Matthew Vaughn movie at any given day. But it's definitely my favorite X-Men movie. Like,
I hadn't rewatched this in a while, so I was really curious on rewatch because I've always been positive on like zero negative things. Like it's always been one of my top X-Men movies. I haven't seen it in a while, so I was like, all right, I'm really curious on where he's going to rank this because it could go as high as 1, it could go as low as 4, where it is. I couldn't imagine going any lower than 4, and just happen to be at the low point just because I just have more fun with the other ones. Like that's just when I'm ranking.
You have to rank stuff on this show, so we gotta rank.
You know what I mean? It's like so that's how I am with like these types of filmmakers. Like if I like the filmmaker for their style, sometimes the style is what's going to take over for me, and that's just why I gravitate to that filmmaker, and that's just all it is. And like literally, like I'm pretty sure Logan's my favorite X-Men. Well, Deadpool 1 and 2, then Logan if we're including them, and then Days of Future Past, but then First Class is second, or the second real X-Men movie. Like those are my like I love Apocalypse. Like I just love this new class of these X-Men because of like I really love the casting. Like I think McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are just like so good. If you told me that this was actually a prequel in terms of like this movie came out first, I would believe you because they set the tempo. Like they do a great job of being not replicas of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but just of genuinely Magneto and Charles Xavier. You know what I mean? They feel like those characters, not those actors playing those characters. You know what I mean? So it does a fantastic job, and it's got all the emotional beats. And like you said, the prequel stuff we kind of hinted at earlier with the Kingsman, like the shooting and him becoming paralyzed. Within the context of that scene, that feels like a story line within this movie that felt natural. You know what I mean? Like the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that stuff, like the tension is high, and it just felt like a natural,
and the way they develop it when you go back and then watch the first X-Men movie, the original, the Bryan Singer X-Men movie, and you have that background, and and they convey it in that movie. I'm not disrespecting Patrick Stewart and all of them, what they do, but you see in this movie, you really buy that they are friends, but then literally by the end, they just see different, they don't see eye to eye as far as like the dealing of the mutants or their views on humanity. Like they do a great job of dealing with that where, you can totally see where he's coming from. Dude was literally a Holocaust survivor. You can see exactly where he's coming from, and you have that sympathy for that. He just thinks the least of humanity, or
which
less
leads
than
into
Xavier
Days
does.
of Future Past.
Yes,
And I feel like that's why Days of Future Past is my favorite, because of but it built up here, so it's like it's close, but it does a good job of like setting up these characters for like their mindsets, and it's like that's what they say about the best villains. They don't necessarily need to be right. You just need to genuinely believe.
You can believe they believe what they believe. You know what I mean? Like that, you can see their point of view. You understand exactly where they're coming from, and on any given day, it's like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the Koba character, when he says that like this is like what humans do to me, and he points out like all the test stuff that he does on him, and you're like, I fucking get that, dude. You know what I mean? Like you could get where he's coming from. You know what I'm saying? Like all those characters, that's the best thing you do. Like the Joker stuff, with Joaquin Phoenix. Like you get where he's coming from when he says, I've never had a single happy day in my entire fucking life. You know what I mean? Like you get that, especially at that point in the movie, like you feel that, and like so that's the best villain characters you can create, as long as you sympathize with.
And to juxtapose that, like you genuinely believe Charles Xavier loves him. You know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, it starts off with him saving him out in the ocean because he witnesses his torment of almost willing to kill himself to get revenge, and like he's haunted by revenge, and it just showcases from day one Charles Xavier is going to put his life on the line for this person, and the way that they were able to become a team, and do all that stuff. Like you said, it's fantastic. It does a great job. So yeah, it's literally, of my top four, I'm less likely to put this one on, and that's at that point, that's my tiebreaker. And it's funny that I say that on this show, because I hate when people say that on tournament fights, where it's like, if you're gonna put
no, but hey, sometimes it's true, man. Like
sometimes it is true,
but sometimes again, me. That's kind of what I base some of these on. Is just like how many times I put it on, I just enjoy it. I can just vibe with the movie. You know what I mean? And like this is one of those ones where I can. And again, my margin between 1 and 2 is razor thin. You know what I mean? Like any given day, I could watch X-Men again, First Class again, and be like, nah, man, this is number 1. You know what I'm saying? like I could do that any given day. So totally. So I guess we have the same number 1, so that's cool.
Kick ass, dude. This
movie kicks ass. This movie kicks ass.
Yeah. So I've loved this movie from day one, and because it does a great job of setting. This is essentially the Scream of superhero movies. It parodies it while still being a fantastic superhero movie. Like everything with his character of like, he means well. He plays, he's a high school guy with his high school problems with friends. He pretends to be gay just because of, he gets beat up and he's naked, and he's like, oh, just going with it. But he's not doing it to be evil. He's doing it because he just wants to get close to someone. He honestly just wants someone in his life, after the death of his mom, and just his relationship with his dad just not being, all there, and just him wanting to be attention. It's a high school boy. So then, you believe that Katie is accepting of it after the initial grossness of it. And then she's like, well, I do love you. You know what I mean? Essentially. So because they built up the relationship, and then everything with Big Daddy and Hit Girl, like all that stuff is awesome. Everything with the cop right now, I'm blanking on his name. The friend cop. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, I'll look it up. Hang on.
Yeah, but he's fantastic. Like he's it doesn't bear the story, but it has a perfect point. So by the end, when Hit Girl goes to live with him, it all makes sense. It's good. Everything with D'Amico.
It's Omari Hardwick playing Marcus, Sergeant Marcus.
Simple Marcus. But yeah, he's fantastic. But yeah, everything with D'Amico, he's just a villainous bad guy. But honestly, he's really not trying to be a villain.
He's not trying to be a super villain. He's just doing his mob sort of things, but he doesn't go after Kick-Ass or the superheroes until they interfere with his being. It would totally be separate things. He would just go about his business. They would go about their business. They would totally not even know each other existed, honestly, until they actually cross paths in the movie. You know what I mean? He's a good dad. He loves his kid. He takes his kid to the movies and shit. He's not necessarily trying to be a villain guy. And yes, he has harsh ways of punishing his henchmen, putting them in that microwave thing and shit like that.
Even though that wasn't the plan technically, but yes.
Right. But yes, that wasn't the plan, and it turns out bad. They were just gonna snip his fingers off, typical mob shit or whatever. But when they actually do that, and you're like, oh my god. But yeah, I mean, realistically, he's not trying to take over the world. He's not trying to take over the city. He's not trying to go and revenge kill everybody that he meets. You know what I mean? He's just
like a Daredevil villain. You know?
Yeah, what I mean? He's just an underground mob guy, and if you don't go interfere in his shit, he'll never even know you exist. You know what I mean? Like it's just he's just there. But Mark Strong plays that so well, like the dynamic of that. So like I said, the stuff where he's interacting with Christopher Mintz-Plasse, like just as a dad, like is still kind of cool because like he wants to know about the family business. No, you're too young. Like I'm not going to tell you. Like you need to stay. Like maybe later, but like not now. You're not ready for that. And he's the frustrated. Like I just even like the father stuff, son stuff with them like is good. And
when you have Chris when he's just like sitting in his chair and he's just like pretending like he's cosplaying. He's like, yeah, you do this shit, you do that shit. He just it's one of those where it's like because he's a kid, dude. He doesn't know, but he just wants to be like his dad. Then he uses Chris to like infiltrate Kick-Ass with the MySpace thing. He's like, oh, I'm gonna become Red Mist, and I got the cool car. I'm gonna let the media. We gotta screw
over our henchman guy,
one of our guys that we don't even like anyway. You know what I mean? Like
Tony, he's a scumbag.
But the one scene where Dave goes to confront Razul and all that stuff, and then Hit Girl, that was like the real first Hit Girl scene. You're like, holy shit, like this is what we're talking about. And she's like, don't be a pussy, you know what I mean? It's like she's R-rated and it's like this is what we're doing. And then
I like even she's not even flawless in that scene. Big Daddy has to save her with the one sniper shot. Remember, like she forgets to check the corners. Like she makes mistakes. Like she's a badass, but like she's still inexperienced. Like they shows that.
And we're talking about the father dynamic.
Come on.
Big Daddy when they're doing the thing where he shoots her the vest, and she was like, oh, he's like, it's like getting punched in the chest. She's like, oh man, I don't like it being punched in the chest. Like little things like that. Or when he gets her something for her birthday, she's like. And then before that, and she was like, "No, I'm just fuck with you, Daddy. I want this." And it's the butterfly
Barbie doll. I'm just fucking with you. I'm gonna get you too.
But then the final one, obviously the demise of Big Daddy. Like that scene is so fucking nuts, dude. Like obviously in the context of the film, the Joker scene is more horrific in The Dark Knight. Like look at me, like all that stuff, like that's just the better acting in terms of like everything. But like this scene in the context of this film stands out. Like this is that brutal turn that you talk about. And even in the narration, he's like, just because I'm talking to you doesn't mean I made it. Like, and Matthew Vaughn does a good job of that, where it's like even if it does go by the end expected, like in Kingsman, all stuff. Leading up to it, you don't know because there's so much wild shit that happens. And yeah, dude, Kick-Ass is awesome. And this is one of those movies that people probably have been sleeping on so much. They're like, oh, I watched it a bunch back then. I know how I feel about it. And they slowly forget how high it is. No, this movie is awesome.
No, and I love the musical cues, the original score that they use, like the superhero-ish score. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Like it's really good. I love the way they incorporate the John Murphy stuff from Sunshine and from 28 Days Later, like both those scores, because they use the Sunshine score when Big Daddy's like putting on his makeup and shit, like get ready for like the final thing. And then they obviously in the Big Daddy scene where he's taking out everybody in the warehouse, they're using the dun 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 dun, from the 28 Days Later stuff. Like all that stuff really works. So like even when I saw it in the theater, I was like, oh shit, he's using like 28 Days Later music. Like that's awesome. And I'm sure he used it with permission, but yeah, that's really cool. And the way Nick Cage, like his like Adam West Batman impression is like so much fun. I rerouted
more like
IP address. I rerouted your IP address. Finding you was way too easy. I love that choice of his. Like, which is why me and Malcolm, we did a rank 'em thing about Nick Cage performances, and I lobbied for as this is one of his best top 10, top 12 performances. Like, even though it's a side character, because I just think he steals every scene he's in. I love the characterization he does with that. You can tell like he wanted to do his sort of tribute to that, but he does it so well. And yeah, their dynamic is great. And yeah, I feel like Aaron Terrence Johnson doesn't get enough credit either. Like nowadays, like he gets thrown into a lot of stuff, but like people think he's kind of bland or whatever. But like I think he's great in this movie. Like his Kick-Ass, like playing the way his character like develops throughout the movie. Like the actual character arc is great because again, there's those gut punch moments like when he goes and he's all high and he's confident and he goes to confront the carjacker guys and like he gets a few shots in and then just the stab and like the whole movie like almost freezes and you're just like, oh, that's right. Like this is real life. Yeah. He's not gonna win all the time. You know what I mean? Like he loses immediately. And even in the scene where he's like helping the guy like against like the gang fight or whatever, like he doesn't really win. It's just like it's kind of a stalemate and the cops are coming. So it's just like he just sort of lasts.
Outside of the store when
outside of the store when they're recording it, like he just more like survives and kind of lasts and
he's getting fucked up. Like he's essentially Rocky in that scene. Like he just happened to take enough punches because he is not winning at all. And if he didn't have his batons, and I love that he just has his batons, dude. He just gets a little wetsuit
and his gay ass
online.
taser.
Dude, it's just so much fun,
Yeah.
dude. I swear to God. Like, if you guys are even like thinking about it, this list, and you're like, how is this your guys' number one? Go back and watch it. I promise you. If you have not watched this in 2+ years, you're gonna be refreshed. And it's a weird comparison, but it's honestly how I feel like when I go back and watch Deadpool nowadays, where it's like, oh yeah, the shtick, blah blah blah. But if you go back after a long time of not seeing it, you're like, it's fucking awesome. Like, I feel like Kick-Ass is the same thing, where it's like, oh, it's just a parody of superhero movies. Like, no dude, it's the
layered.
Scream of superhero movies. I swear to God, I don't think anyone's ever said that. I'm saying it with confidence.
And this is a total personal thing, just like icing on the cake type of thing. But when Hit Girl goes to, like, she's doing like the little girl thing, like, I'm lost, like, help me, call my parents here, and it's the music from For a Few Dollars More, which is my favorite Western. Like, it's the For a Few Dollars More music, which I love. Like, I love that score, and it's just like, it's so, like, he just hits all my buttons in this one. Like, so maybe it's like more of a personal thing, but like, all just those beats are so much fun, and they hit like the don't give a damn about my bad reputation. Like, that scene sequence is amazing. I mean, and just a great payoff with, like, they've been building up this box, like the stuff that they've been looking at online, and it's a fucking jetpack with like Gatling guns on it. Like, that's awesome. That's just fun.
And then the rocket launcher.
Yeah. Hallelujah. Like, it's just so good. Like, it's just such a great payoff movie. It's just really entertaining as shit. Like, I love this movie to pieces. I think it's just wonderful.
It feels like the Scream version of a superhero movie meets Indiana Jones meets True Lies. Like, there's just so much of this wild shit where it's just like he's getting his ass kicked, but then it becomes this fucking terrorism stuff with mobsters. Yeah. It's like he's throwing darts, but he's hitting, dude. He's literally like, let me just throw some random shit in there. He's like, all right, that's random. I'm gonna make it work, and you know what I mean. He just makes it work, dude. This movie's a blast, and if you haven't seen it in a long time, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But any last things you want to talk about, Kick-Ass?
No, man. I agree with you. If you have not revisited this movie, and I mean, there's a reason it both crossovers are number one. I didn't expect that, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Like, I love this movie. I'm glad you love this movie as much as I do. Like, I think this movie's it's just so layered, and the twists and turns that it takes are so great. But like, a lot of stuff is out of nowhere and kind of crazy, but like, it all works. Like, there's you can have those crazy movies that have those wild tangents and those weird payoffs and things, but like, they work, man. And we can't say enough about the cast, like the score. The movie looks great. Like, I love the color scheme of the movie, like the yellows and the greens and like everything.
And then when red mist pops, the
red stuff,
the contrast of the green with the red.
Yeah. Just like the little things about that, and the less said about Kick-Ass 2, the better. But yeah, like the Kick-Ass 1, that will never take away from how much I love this movie. I think this movie just kicks ass.
I know it's gonna sound stupid, but like even the scenes of like just Dave just jerking off and just being a lonely.
So real,
like,
though. That's real.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a cheesy, gross out thing. It just feels like introduction to a teenage boy and like why he would want to be a superhero. And like we haven't mentioned like Evan Peters, like he's just a side character, but like he just did a good job as like a friend. Evan
Peters, the two friends,
you know what I mean. And like everything about this movie is just cool, dude. And like I said, the Katie character, like she's great as as her own, but like it feels like a natural progression of that relationship. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like, oh, we just need to give him the girl. Like, it makes sense like how it worked. And yeah, dude, this movie's a blast. So yeah, I actually, fun fact, last night before bed, after midnight, I saw from 3 years ago my rankings of my top 32 superhero movies, and this was at like the 22 mark, and that was without even seeing it for a year plus at that point in 2019. So like I said, this is the first rewatch, dude. It's skyrocketed up into my top 20 like all-time superhero movies. So like, this movie is a blast, dude. It's fire. I know it's high on your list. Do you have exact number of where it is on your personal 64?
On my personal 64, I want to say like Kick-Ass is in the 40s somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
And then X-Men First Class is like in the 50s or 60s. It's up there. But yeah, they're both in my 64. Like, I hinted that last week that like two of these movies were, and yeah, it's those two movies. Kingsman will probably not crack that. But like, I really like that movie as well. I think that movie's excellent. But yeah, it's a rewatchability, sort of a thing for me. But yeah, both those movies are in my top, man. They're up there. I love both these movies.
Yeah, Kick-Ass is the only 5-star on my personal list, but it is currently on my redux of my top 20 superhero movies. It's actually my number 12, right behind Deadpool and Guardians, and right in front of The Suicide Squad. So it's like it's just kind of that chunk of like all those movies. Like, dude, I could do a marathon of all 4 of those movies and just have zero issues. Like it's a blast, and it's somewhere in like the 150 range on my top 250. So it's up there, dude. I love this movie, and highly recommend it. But some ones that we didn't love all the way are Collective number 7. I decided we're going to give that to The King's Man. Okay. I agree that the technical aspects of our number 6 will, I'll give it that. So number 6 is Stardust.
To me, again, it's more of the character stuff in Stardust that is a little bit better for me. You know what I mean?
Like, and then, like I said, the technical, it just works. So it just looks better. I would have it in the background. Number 5, Kingsman, The Golden Circle. Mm-hmm. Number 4 feels bad for me because it's my number 2. But number 4 is Layer Cake. Number 3 is
we matched on it.
X-Men.
Oh, I thought we matched on the Secret Service.
Yeah, okay, but because we matched,
gotcha.
We had to bump
gotcha,
it up.
Gotcha.
And then Kick-Ass is our number 1. So
all right,
that's our number 7. But I can't imagine anyone looking at that list and be like, "That's a weird order." Like, no, that's a solid. Even both of our lists. You know what I mean? I felt like, this is a good episode. So Mathew Vaughn, it was a refreshing one. We actually messed up behind the scenes and just screwed up our dates.
I screwed that up. That's all. That's on me.
Taika Waititi is going to be the following week post Thor: Love and Thunder. So next week we decided to do an easy one. A little 6 matchup, 3-on-3, Back to the Future versus Bill and Ted. Let's do a little time travel.
Travel duos, Doc and Marty versus Bill and Ted. So that's what we're gonna do.
Fun fact. And fun fact for that is obviously I've seen all 3 Back to the Futures multiple times, and I've actually seen Bill and Ted 1 once, but it was one of those where I was like, I didn't hate that. And I haven't seen 2 and 3 yet, so it's going to be interesting to see.
So you might watch the whole Bill and Ted trilogy just to refresh yourself.
Just to refresh. And it's one of those where it's like, honestly, who knows what this ranking is going to go? Because that first Bill and Ted, it was pretty shocking. So I don't know.
And I told you behind the scenes, and you're watching Bogus Journey and Face the Music for the first time. I really like Bogus Journey, man. I think it's a good movie too. And again, this is going to be tough because I pretty much like all of these movies. So ranking them is going to be a little tricky, especially where I put like the Back to the Future movies, where I mix in like Bill and Ted, in there. That's why we like doing these crossovers, because you really got to think about that. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with Bogus Journey. It's a different movie, but it's a fun movie. Yeah. And I enjoyed Face the Music when it came out. It wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed it. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Just for anyone watching, if you're watching this on the repeat, we don't have any lives right now, but if you're watching this on the repeat and you want to kind of be, follow along with us or, whatever, all 3 Bill and Ted's are on Paramount Plus. So if you have a Paramount Plus, you can watch those right now. So it's going to be fun. So with that said, my name is Henry and then obviously Taika
Waititi, and then we're building up to Terminator versus RoboCop after that. So that'll be a big mega one, a longer episode, but we do those every now and then. Big mega episode. We'll do that later. So
especially the summer, and then we got to do Transformers real soon because I just watched them for TMG Geek. They're fresh in my mind. I have a ranking, baby. We're gonna have to.
All right, you're gonna have to give me a little bit of space on that one so I can start watching like a movie a week. Because oh my god, those movies are long.
They are. I will admit they are long, but
all right. I like them. I will indulge you if you'll indulge me on another horror franchise at some point. So we'll trade off. We'll trade off. Yeah.
There we go. So with that, and obviously, as always, comment below if you guys have any recommendations. We'll prioritize it because we're just we have a list of 100 plus that we could do. So
a whole note app on it.
If you ever want to be the tiebreaker, whatever's in the comments, if there's something for it. So make sure you check out everything that he's doing over on the Movie Hero Network, Tier Ranker Fights, podcast about movies and tournament fights. And make sure you check out me and John Mars podcast on Mondays. There will be horror. We're gonna get Pez on there soon because I know he's a big horror guy. So definitely
it just needs to be the right movies that I'm super passionate about. I don't want to come on and be like not too passionate about some of the things, like some of those movies you guys are doing lately. Like I like them, but I'm not like over the moon about them. So I don't want to come on and just be like kind of a wet blanket. Like I just don't want to do that. Like I want to come on and like about something I'm really passionate about and I can add to. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
we'll do that. So for sure.
So and then make sure obviously if you're a fan of the channel, there will be trivia singles and doubles is there. But if not, and you like movie trivia, go ahead and check those out. So Henry Confidential, Awesome Pesal. Make sure you post notifications on because we might be judging Battlegrounds and doing Battlegrounds right before this, or Pez might be working a night shift, and we never know exactly when we're going to be going. And today's Thursday. Used to do this on Wednesdays, but I had some car trouble. That's why I even forgot. I forgot it's not even the right day.
Hit that bell because you never know when the hell we're going to
go. It's always going to be pretty consistent, but the days and times not exactly. But this is in fact where we rank stuff. Henry Confidential, Awesome Pesal.